to the grandmother that you were introduced to and under the witness tree through letters only. So now you're getting to see her actual life and how she's raising her granddaughter. Excuse me, and please pardon my morning voice. It's horrible. Okay. Are we alone then? Lita Jenkins asked. How this ambitious young woman, now sharing the parlor with her, had come to trust speaking without fear of reproach was beyond Addie. Excuse me. How could... I'm sorry, I really cannot say.
Can the little light come on right there on the...
No, this is good, I think. This is fine. I was guessing at what else.
You wrote it.
You don't know, make it up. You're wrong. There you go. Don't try this at home.
Okay, this is all right.
Oh, yeah, that's all. That is a whole lot.
Very good. That's right. Okay, here we go. What could have prompted her confidence in an old woman, raised up in a time of strict and clearly defined boundaries? How could she have known what had never been spoken? Or does she know that the boundaries had changed once, years ago, when the women took the reins left loose by war, and that some had never forgotten how that felt? We are, Addie replied. My son-in-law is in town and my daughter is taken to her bed today. Lita nodded, dark wisps of hair falling free of a pinned-up coif, fluttered with the air of the overhead fan. Large brown eyes locked with Addie. There's been another lynching, this one in Decatur. There's no justice to it in Satellines, no proof of any wrongdoing deserving of death. Her voice flexed with a reserved strength. This has got to stop. However unjust, Lita, I don't see what we can do to stop it. How do you know who you talk to by day doesn't down the road at night? You certainly know that even speaking of injustices has its own consequences. A question she had pondered often over the past year as she listened to Lita navigate the boundaries of discussion reserved for the men's club. But it must start there, don't you see? We must start to talk about it. Otherwise, what does our silence say? This is not only a legal issue, it's a human issue, Addie. It's our issue. It's not merely about justice for them, but about our right as women to speak of it. And a cause, I'm afraid, replied Addie, for others, whose principles can weather the risk. My daughter isn't well, and much of the care of her girls is my responsibility. I'm all they have to count on. I can't risk their care for the well-being for my principles. Lita leaned forward, soft blue eyes, and met the soft blue eyes and held them. I know who you are, Miss Adeline. I've listened to the talk. I've done my reading. I know who I'm talking to. It was principle that saved this place. You alone, standing against fear, I can only imagine, facing Sherman's men eye to eye. There's no other way this house survives, except for your tenacious defense of principle. I'm not that woman anymore, Rita. I'm old and I'm tired. And you want what is best for those girls. If there was a way to make this world a better place, I can't believe you wouldn't do it. Addie's tone struggled to shed the years, to regain the stride of the years. Where is it you propose to speak about it? She asked. Meetings, disguised as cooking and sewing and mindless chatter, simply speaking to each other. None of us with a voice to change a thing. Even together, Lita, we're just better human beings. Together, you and I and every woman with a conviction of her own worth have a voice that's stronger and louder and can reach the men who can make a difference. She couldn't deny it. Lita had stirred something in her that years of living, of merely managing and settling, had stilled. She saw in this woman's eyes what her own had once shown, heard in her voice the passion that had once powered her own words. But the years had also taught Addie the importance of the space between should and could. There are too many men like my son-in-law, she said, who would fight hard to quiet us. There would be consequences. What of your husband? Do you jeopardize your marriage by speaking out? I speak my mind at home. James has a sympathetic ear. He's a man of some compromise, but I do fear that if he's faced with standing apart from his peers, he would hesitate to support me. That's why we must find others willing to listen, fundamentally unopposed to compromise. Men like James need to find common ground. We start there. Lita grasped Addie's hand and squeezed it. Help us search them out, Adeline. So young, Addie thought. This woman so full of righteous conviction and hope. Knowing that we are right, she said, may be our own satisfaction at the end of the day. Then we'll add another day, Lily said, stiffening her posture, and another. Everything had been thought out carefully. At quilting meetings, a certain amount of quilting actually did get done. Not by the fastest stitchers, but enough to qualify in case someone asked. They worked on their own quilts, made their own progress. Nothing for the regular quilters to be suspicious of. 6 women stitched as though that was their true mission. Their ages didn't matter, or their family names, or who their husbands were. What mattered was being there. And they came armed. Here's the article in the journal for anyone who hasn't read it. Rita pulled the paper from her bag and passed it to Gladys Ashford, whose husband purposefully kept the newspapers at work and out of their house. She had little doubt that the others would read it. It's clear that the journal is supporting Hope Smith, although I doubt Clark Powell will be any better of a governor. Before anyone else could do anything but nod, Gladys quoted aloud. Powell appears to be unable to understand why it is we wish the legal disenfranchisement of 223,000 male Negroes of voting age in Georgia. She looked up with the expression they had all grown to expect after her fresh exposure to news. They're afraid the Negroes will be able to actually vote. There is talk, Rita added, that a number of Negro businessmen are uniting to vote in this election. Margaret Hout spoke, as she often did, with a peppery edge to her voice. Smith and Howell are each trying to outdo each other as to which one of them will go the furthest to save us from Negro domination. Margaret's husband didn't keep all things political from her, but he didn't discuss them either. He stated his opinion, his fear, his anger, and she understood it better than he knew. Men, she continued, who are afraid that voting will make Negroes think that they are equal to whites, are easily manipulated. That's what we should fear. Addie had stitched, listened politely over the past week, and made her assessment. These were committed, these unassuming women, feeling their weight in unsupported thought, feeling a collectively unsteady voice. They spoke from conscience, felt its weight, and Addie saw in their eyes the heaviness of it. Addie had felt it too many years ago. Deeding land to Charles Jameson and paying a fair wage for Negro labor had gone a long way in lightening the load, but it wasn't enough. She'd known it for a while, long before Rita Jenkins presented her with an almost unavoidable invitation to acknowledge it. It was more than speaking out for a cause, more than trying to right a wrong. It was the speaking out, it was the voice. A collective voice, yes, but more it was her own voice. She hadn't heard it or claimed it beyond the boundary of her home in years. It had been too silent, too private, too self-absorbed for longer now than she could remember. The years, though, had not erased the memory of how she had let it soar once for love, or how its strength of conviction had once made her feel. Rita was right. It wasn't just about the lynching. It was about the voice.